It is late. The house is quiet, and the world beyond your window has settled into that soft, breathless hush that comes only after midnight. Perhaps you are lying in bed, the weight of the day slowly melting from your shoulders, or maybe you are curled up in an armchair with a cup of something warm, letting your mind drift. Either way, you have come here for a story, and I have one for you. It is not a story of kings or battles, not a tale of philosophers in sunlit groves. It is a story of dust and heat, of heavy stone and aching muscles. It is the story of the men and women who worked the quarries of ancient Greece, the ones who pulled marble and limestone from the earth so that temples and statues could rise toward the sky. Their names have long been forgotten, but their labor is still with us, in every column and every carved figure that survives from that distant age. Tonight, we will go back to that time, step by slow step, and see what it was like to live and work in the shadow of the mountain. Let us begin by clearing a space in your mind. Imagine a coastline of brilliant blue water, the Aegean Sea, lapping against rocky shores. Now pull back away from the sea and climb inland into the hills. The landscape is dry and rugged, covered in scrubby thorn bushes and wild herbs that release their scent when crushed underfoot. The sun beats down hard, and the air shimmers with heat. In the distance, you hear a sound not loud, but persistent. It is a rhythmic, metallic chinking, like a giant woodpecker drilling into the mountain. That sound has been going on for hours, for days, for years. It is the sound of iron tools striking stone. And if you follow that sound, you will come to Quarry. This is not a quarry as we might imagine it today, with heavy machinery and roaring engines. It is a wound in the hillside, a great gash of white or pale gray where the living rock has been cut away. The stone here is not just any stone. It is pentelic marble, fine-grained and gleaming, the same stone that would later become the Parthenon. Or perhaps it is the honey-colored limestone of Corinth, or the black marble of Eleusis. Each quarry had its own character, its own kind of dust, its own peculiar hardships. But in every case, the work was the same. Men, and sometimes women and children, would stand in the blinding glare of the sun, or in the damp gloom of a cave-like gallery, and hammer wedges into cracks, or saw through blocks with nothing more than sand and a wire, or lever huge slabs of stone onto wooden sledges. They did this day after day, for a small wage, or sometimes only for the promise of a meal. And they did it knowing that the dust would get into their lungs, that the heat would drain their strength, and that a single misstep could crush a limb or end a life. Let us walk closer. The path up to the quarry is steep and rocky, worn smooth by countless feet. You can see the remains of ancient worksheds, low walls of rough stone where the workers would sharpen their tools or take shelter during the worst of the midday heat. There are piles of waste chips, millions of small shards that glint in the sun like scattered bones. The air tastes of grit. If you stand still and listen carefully, you can hear the foreman shouting orders, or the murmur of voices as men talk while they work. They do not sing, not often. Singing takes too much breath. Instead, they grunt and curse, or they stay silent, saving their energy for the next blow. The workers themselves are a mix of backgrounds. Some are free men, skilled craftsmen who have learned the trade from their fathers. They are proud of their ability to read the grain of the stone, to know exactly where to strike so that the block splits cleanly. Others are slaves, bought and sold in the market, owned by the quarry owner. There is no difference in the work they do. Both free and slave sweat the same sweat, breathe the same dust, and carry the same heavy loads. The only difference is that the free man can leave at sunset, while the slave cannot. But at the end of the day, both are exhausted. Both are covered in a fine white powder that settles into every crease and crack of the skin. And the dust. Oh, the dust. It is everywhere. It gets into your eyes, your nose, your mouth. It coats your hair and your clothes. It makes your throat raw and your chest tight. The ancient Greek physicians knew that quarry workers had short lives. They called the disease metallicin or pneumonicin, a sickness of the lungs caused by inhaling sharp particles of stone. We would call it silicosis, but the name does not matter. What matters is that the workers knew it too. They knew that every breath they took was slowly turning their lungs into stone. But what could they do? The quarry paid. It paid just enough to live, or for a slave, it paid in the simple fact of being fed. And so they worked, coughing and spitting, while the marble dust sparkled in the sunlight like a slow poison. Now, let us go deeper into the quarry, to where the men are cutting a new block. Method is ancient and painstaking. First, the workers must expose the stone, clearing away the topsoil and the weathered outer layer. They use picks and crowbars, and sometimes they light fires against the rock face and then douse it with water, causing the stone to crack and flake. This is a slow process and a dangerous one. The heat of the fire is intense, and the steam that rises when the water hits the hot rock can scald a man's skin. But once the face of the quarry is clean, the real work begins. The workers mark out the shape of the block on the rock surface. They use a measuring stick and a string, or sometimes just their eyes, and a straight line drawn with charcoal. Then they begin to cut channels around the block. This is done with a pick, a heavy iron tool with a pointed end. A man will swing it over his head and bring it down with all his strength, again and again. The sound is a dull thud, followed by the high-pitched ring of metal on stone. He aims for the same spot, chipping away a little more each time. It takes hours to cut a channel only a few centimeters deep. The man's arms ache, his back screams, his hands are blistered and calloused. He wipes the sweat from his eyes and swings again. Once the channels are deep enough, the workers must separate the block from the bedrock underneath. This is the most dangerous part. They drive wooden wedges into the cracks and then soak them with water. The wood swells and the pressure grows enormous. Sometimes the stone splits cleanly with a sound like thunder. Sometimes it does not. Sometimes the stone cracks in the wrong place and a month of labor is wasted. Or sometimes the block breaks loose too suddenly and a man is crushed beneath it. The foreman keeps a careful eye on the work, but even he cannot control the whim of the stone. When the block is free, it must be moved. This is where the real ingenuity of the ancient quarry workers shines. They have no cranes, no trucks, no engines. They have ropes and wooden levers and the strength of many men. The block, which can weigh several tons, is carefully levered onto a wooden sledge. The sledge is a simple platform with runners, like a giant sled. Then the workers, sometimes 100 or more, attach ropes and begin to drag it. They sing a work song, or perhaps they just grunt in unison. Their feet find purchase in the dust, and inch by inch, the block slides forward. The path from the quarry to the nearest road or harbor is often a specially built ramp, made of compacted earth and stone. It is gradual, so that the sledges do not slide too fast. But even so, the workers must be constantly alert. The ropes can snap, and the sledge can tip. If it tips, the block can roll and crush anyone in its path. The guards stand by with whips, but they are not there to protect the workers from the stone. They are there to make sure the workers do not stop. And all the while, the sun beats down. In summer, the heat is almost unbearable. The workers start before dawn, when the air is still cool, and they stop for a long break in the middle of the day, when the sun is at its zenith. They rest in the shade of a temporary awning made from cloth stretched between poles. They drink water from clay jars, water that is warm and tastes of the clay. They eat a simple meal of bread and olives, maybe a piece of dried fish or a bit of cheese. They have no salt tablets, no electrolyte drinks. They have only water and the hope that the worst of the heat will pass. And then they go back to work until the shadows grow long and the light turns golden. Then they stop for the day. They do not go home to a warm bath and a soft bed. Instead, the free workers walk back to their villages, perhaps an hour or two away, and the slaves are herded into cramped sleeping huts, where they lie on the bare earth or on a pile of straw. They are too tired to talk. They fall asleep almost instantly, their bodies aching, their lungs still full of dust. And in the morning, they will do it all again. This was the daily reality for thousands of people over the centuries. They built the temples that we still admire, the statues that fill our museums, the very foundations of Western civilization. And they built it with their hands, their backs, and their shortened lives. It is a story of endurance, of quiet heroism, of uncelebrated labor. And as we sit here in our quiet rooms, far from the dust and the heat, it is worth remembering that every marble column we gaze upon was once a mountain, and that every mountain had its workers. We will come back to them. We will follow a single block of stone from the quarry to the building site. We will see how they lifted those immense blocks into place, and how they carved them into works of art. And we will meet a few of the people who did this work, whose names we do not know, but whose sweat remains in the stone. But for now, let the image settle. The quarry, the chinking of tools, the dust in the air, and the men, bent and sweating, moving the mountain one blow at a time. Sleep well. We will continue when you are ready. Perhaps you have rested now. Perhaps the dust has settled from your mind, and the sound of the pick has faded into the background hum of your own quiet room. Let us return to the quarry, but this time we will follow a single block. Not the largest block, not the most famous, but one of the countless blocks that were cut, moved, and lifted into place to form a temple or a public building. We will stay with this block from the moment it is freed from the mountain until it finds its final resting place, a small piece of a larger whole. The block we choose is a rectangular mass of white marble, roughly 3 meters long, 1.5 meters wide, and 1 meter high. It weighs about 12 tons. That is the weight of several cars or a small herd of cattle. It is not the heaviest block. Quarries sometimes produced blocks of 40 or 50 tons for the largest columns, but it is heavy enough to kill a man if it shifts the wrong way, heavy enough to require the strength of dozens of men to move it. The morning after the block is separated from the bedrock, the foreman walks around it, tapping it with a small iron hammer. He listens to the sound. A clear ring means the stone is sound. A dull thud might indicate a hidden crack. This block rings clear. He nods, satisfied. The workers gather around, their tools ready. They have already prepared the sledge, a heavy wooden platform with runners made from oak, oiled to reduce friction. The sledge sits at the edge of the quarry floor, its runners resting on logs that will act as rollers. The process of loading the block onto the sledge is slow and methodical. First, the workers dig a shallow trench beneath the block, just deep enough to slide wooden levers under it. The levers are stout poles, as thick as a man's thigh, and they are used to pry the block up, millimeter by millimeter. As the block rises, workers push wooden wedges underneath to hold it in place. They do this again and again on each side until the block is raised high enough for the sledge to be slid beneath it. This is not a job for the impatient. A man who rushes can cause the block to tip or a lever to slip, and the consequences are immediate and final. So they work slowly, with the patience of men who have done this 100 times before. They breathe in rhythm, their muscles straining, their faces set in concentration. When the sledge is finally positioned, the block is carefully lowered onto it. The wedges are removed one by one, and the block settles with a groan that echoes through the quarry. The workers step back, wiping their foreheads, and the foreman inspects the placement. It is square, centered, secure. Now comes the journey. The ramp that leads out of the quarry is a gradual slope, built of packed earth and broken stone, with a surface of clay to reduce friction. It is wide enough for the sledge and the men who will pull it. The ropes are attached to the sledge, each rope as thick as a man's wrist, braided from hemp and reinforced with leather at the points of greatest strain. The ropes are long, so that many men can pull at once. They are arranged in teams, with the strongest men at the front, nearest the sledge, and the others fanning out behind. The foreman gives the signal. A horn sounds, or a shout. The men lean into the ropes, their bodies at an angle, their feet digging into the ramp. They do not pull all at once. They pull in a rhythm, a kind of rocking motion. On the count of 3, or rather, on the word of the foreman, who calls out, "Hup," they all strain together, and the sledge lurches forward. It moves only a handspin, but it moves. The men take a breath, and they do it again, and again, and again. The block does not glide smoothly. It jerks and groans, and the runners of the sledge scrape against the ramp, leaving deep grooves. Every few meters, workers must reposition the logs that act as rollers behind the sledge, picking them up from the back and placing them in front. This is a dangerous task. A log can slip, or the sledge can roll over a man's foot. Workers who handle the logs are nimble and quick, but they are also covered in dust and sweat, and their hands are raw from the rope. They move with a kind of practiced urgency, never stopping, never hesitating. As the sledge climbs the ramp, the sun rises higher. The heat becomes intense. The men are stripped to the waist, their bodies glistening. Their mouths are dry and their throats burn. The dust from the ramp mixes with the dust from the quarry, and the air is thick with it. They cough, but they do not stop. They cannot stop. If they stop, the sledge might roll backward, and the men at the front would be crushed. So they keep pulling, step by step, breath by breath. Occasionally, the foreman calls for a rest. The men drop the ropes and stagger to the side of the ramp, collapsing into the thin shade of a scrubby olive tree or the shadow cast by the sledge itself. They drink from water skins, the water warm and tasting of leather. They pour water over their heads to cool themselves, and the water runs down their faces, cutting channels through the dust. They do not speak much. They are too tired, but there is a kind of camaraderie in their silence, a shared understanding that they are all in this together. One of the workers, a free man named Philon, has been working in the quarries since he was a boy. He is now in his 40s, old for this work. His back is crooked, his hands are gnarled, and he has a cough that never goes away. He knows that his lungs are slowly filling with stone, but he does not think about it. He thinks about his daughter, who is to be married next year, and about the small plot of land he hopes to buy with his savings. He thinks about the wine he will drink tonight, a cheap, sour wine that he will mix with water, and the bread his wife will have waiting. These small thoughts keep him going. He is not a hero. He is just a man who does his job. The block descends from the quarry to the nearest road, a journey of perhaps 2 kilometers, but it takes them the entire day. By late afternoon, they have reached the flat ground where oxen will take over. The oxen are huge, slow beasts, their eyes mild and their horns wide. They are hitched to the sledge with heavy chains, and the men now act as guides, leading the oxen with gentle prods and shouts. The oxen are patient. They lean into their yokes, and the sledge moves forward more steadily now, without the jerky motion of human muscle alone. The road is not paved. It is a dirt track, rutted by years of use, and the sledge bounces and lurches over every bump. The block is stable, but the ropes stretch and creak. The workers walk alongside, ready to attend to any problem. They are all tired, but there is a sense of relief. The hardest part is over. The block will reach the harbor by the next day, where it will be loaded onto a ship and carried across the sea to the city where it will be used. But we will not follow it to the ship tonight. Tonight, we will stay with the workers as they make camp. They do not have tents, not for everyone. They build a fire and sit around it, their faces lit by the flickering light. They cook a simple meal, a stew of lentils and barley, with a little salt pork for flavor. They share a jug of wine, passing it from hand to hand. They talk in low voices, telling stories or complaining about the foreman. One of the younger men, a slave named Draman, sings a song from his homeland, a sad melody about a river and a lost love. The others listen, their eyes distant. The stars come out, bright and clear. The air cools and the dust settles. The workers lie down on the ground, wrapping themselves in their cloaks or in rough blankets. They sleep close to the fire for warmth, but the fire burns low and the night is cold. They do not sleep well. Their bodies ache and they cough in their sleep, but they do sleep and they dream of nothing or of home. And the block sits silent on its sledge, waiting for the morning. It is just a stone. It has no feelings, no thoughts, but it carries with it the sweat and the strength of these men. And when it is finally set in place, supporting a column or a wall, it will remember nothing. That is the way of things. The stone endures, and the men do not. But we remember them. We remember the dust and the heat and the heavy stone. And we remember that every beautiful thing we have inherited from the ancient world was paid for in labor and in life. It is a sobering thought, but also a humbling one. It connects us across thousands of years to those who came before. And in that connection, there is a kind of comfort. Now, let us sleep. Let the image of the campfire fade. Let the sound of the oxen and the creak of the sledge grow quiet. Let the men rest, and we will rest with them. Tomorrow, the block will continue its journey. But tonight, there is only the stillness, the stars, and the slow, steady breathing of tired men. Sleep well, sleep well. But morning comes as it always does. The fire has burned down to gray ash, and the first light stains the eastern sky a pale rose. The air is cold and still, carrying the smell of dry earth and the faint, sour tang of sweat from the day before. One by one, the men stir. They groan. They stretch limbs that have stiffened overnight, and they cough. That same dry, rattling cough that will follow them all their lives. The foreman is already up, kicking at the embers and shouting for them to move. He is not cruel. He is just practical. The stone must move before the sun grows too hot. The men eat a quick breakfast, barley bread, hard and dry, dipped in olive oil, and a handful of dried figs. They drink water from the skin, and some of them add a splash of vinegar to cut the taste of the leather. There is no coffee, no tea, just water and bread and the quiet acceptance of another day of labor. They do not complain. Complaining is pointless. The stone does not care about their complaints, and neither does the foreman. The oxen are already hitched. They have been fed and watered, and they stand with the patience of creatures who have no concept of time. Their breath steams in the cold air, and their eyes are half closed. The men check the ropes and the chains. They test the wedges that hold the block in place. Everything is secure. The foreman gives the signal, and the oxen lean into their yokes. The sledge groans, and the block begins to move again. Today, they will reach the harbor. The road winds through a valley, past small fields and terraced hillsides where olive trees grow in twisted rows. They pass a village, and the children come out to watch. They point at the great block and shout to each other. The workers do not look at them. They are too focused on the road, on the cracks in the ground, on the way the sledge shifts when it hits a stone. One of the men, a young slave named Draman, spits and mutters something under his breath. He has been doing this work for 2 years, and he hates it. But he knows that anything is better than the mines. In the mines, men die quickly. Here, they die slowly. But we are not here to dwell on death. We are here to understand how they survived. And so we turn our attention to the small things, the daily habits that kept them going. The workers drink throughout the day, not just water, but a thin, fermented barley drink called sithos, which is a kind of beer, sour and weak, but refreshing. They make it by soaking barley in water and letting it ferment for a few days. It is not the wine of the rich, but it is wet and it fills the belly. They carry it in clay jars wrapped in wet cloth to keep it cool. When they stop to rest, they pass the jar around, and the beer runs down their chins. It tastes of smoke and grain. It is not delicious, but it is life. They also eat small meals throughout the day. Figs, olives, bits of cheese wrapped in leaves. They do not eat meat often. It is too expensive, too rare. But when an ox dies or a goat is sacrificed, they get a share. They cook it over the fire and eat it with their hands, greasy and hot. They savor it. They talk about the taste for days afterward. But the real secret to their survival is not food or drink. It is the work itself. The work is everything. It gives them a rhythm, a purpose. When they are pulling the sledge, they do not think about the pain in their shoulders or the dust in their lungs. They think about the next step, the next breath, the word of the foreman. They focus on the rope in their hands, the weight of the stone, the ground under their feet. This focus is a kind of meditation. It keeps them from despair. And they have their songs. The songs are simple, with repetitive melodies that match the pace of the work. One man starts the song, and the others join in. The words are often nonsense, or they tell old stories of heroes and gods. But the melody is what matters. It helps them pull together to stay in rhythm. When the song is loud and strong, the block moves more easily. When the song falters, the block feels heavier. So they sing. They sing until their voices are hoarse, and then they hum, and then they are silent. But the memory of the song stays in their muscles. The road to the harbor is long, and the sun climbs higher. By midday, they stop in the shade of a large rock outcropping. The men lie down, their backs against the cool stone. They close their eyes, but they do not sleep. They just rest. One of the older workers, a free man named Nikias, has brought a small pouch of herbs, thyme and mint, and a little bit of sage. He crushes them in his hands and breathes in the smell. He says it clears the lungs. The other men laugh at him, but they also lean in and sniff. The herbs are sharp and green, a small relief from the taste of dust. Nikias is the one who knows about the stones. He can look at a block and tell you where it was cut, what kind of limestone it is, how it will weather. He has been in the quarries since he was 12. He is now 53. His skin is like leather, and his eyes are deep set and clear. He does not laugh much, but he smiles with his eyes. He says that the stone speaks to him. The other men think he is a little mad, but they respect him. When Nikias says a block is good, it is good. When he says a block is bad, they break it up and use it for rubble. During the midday rest, Nikias tells a story. He tells it slowly, the way old men tell stories, with long pauses and a careful selection of words. He says that when he was a boy, there was a quarry worker named Phoebos who had a dream. In the dream, a goddess appeared to him and told him that the stone he was cutting was not just any stone. It was the stone that would become the head of a god. Phoebos woke up and told the foreman, who laughed at him. But Phoebos could not forget the dream. He treated that block with special care. He smoothed it with his own hands. He prayed over it. When the block was finally taken away, it was carved into the face of Zeus that still stands in a temple on the mainland. Nikias swears this is true. The men listen and they nod. They want to believe. It makes the work feel meaningful. The afternoon passes slowly. The oxen are tired and the men are tired. The harbor comes into view around the 5th hour, a cluster of buildings, and a wooden pier stretching into the blue water. The block will be loaded onto a ship tomorrow. But for now, they stop at a staging area near the beach. The foreman pays the men a few coins, a measure of grain, a jar of wine. Some of the free men will return home. The slaves will go back to the quarry compound. Draman, the young slave, stays with the block. He is to guard it through the night. He sits on the sand, his back against the stone, and watches the sun set over the sea. The sky turns orange and pink and purple. The stars come out. He thinks of his mother, who he has not seen in 6 years. He thinks of the river near his home. He wishes he could have a drink of that cold, clean water just once more. But the block needs him, so he stays. And the night grows quiet. Now, let us drift away from Draman for a moment. Let us consider the other workers, the ones who did not make it to the harbor. There is a quarry near Mount Pentelicus, where the marble is white and fine. The workers there have a different life. The stone is harder, and the dust is even more dangerous. They cut the marble with iron wedges and wooden mallets. They use the same techniques as the limestone workers, but the pace is slower. The marble is precious, and every chip is a loss. The foremen are more careful. The workers are more skilled. In the marble quarries, there is a practice called thermoluminescence. Not that they knew that word, but they knew the effect. If you heat a piece of marble slowly, it will glow with a faint light, revealing hidden cracks. The workers would sometimes build small fires over a block at night, then inspect it by torchlight. If the marble showed dark lines, they knew it was flawed. If it stayed uniform, it was good. This was not science. This was witchcraft, passed down from father to son, and it worked. But the marble quarries also have their dangers. The stone can shatter without warning. Men have been killed by flying shards. Others have been crushed when a block fell sideways. The work is slow, but the risk is constant. And the dust, the marble dust, is fine and sharp. It settles in the lungs like glass. The workers call it the White Death. It is one of the reasons why marble is so expensive. Every block of white marble has cost at least one man's health, and often his life. But they do not think about that. They think about the wages, about the food, about the small pleasures. They think about the festivals, when work stops and the wine flows. They think about the women they might marry, the children they might have. They think about the day they will leave the quarry and never return. And sometimes they do leave. A man who is strong and lucky can save enough to buy a small farm. A man who is clever can become a foreman. A man who is both strong and clever might even become a contractor, hiring others to do the work he once did. It is rare, but it happens. And that hope, that tiny flicker of possibility, is what keeps them going. But for most, the quarry is a life sentence. They work until they can no longer work, and then they are put to lighter tasks, or they are left to die. It is not kind, but it is the way of the world. And yet, there is beauty in it. There is a strange, quiet dignity in the way they move. There is a rhythm to their work that is almost musical. The sound of the hammer on the wedge, the groan of the sledge, the shout of the foreman, the lowing of the oxen, it all blends into a kind of symphony. If you close your eyes and listen, you can hear it. You can hear the heartbeat of an ancient industry pulsing across the centuries. So lie back. Let the sounds wash over you. Let the heat of the sun fade and the cool of the evening settle. Picture the campfire, the stars, the silent block waiting on the beach. Picture Draman asleep but still sitting, his head bowed, his hand resting on the stone as if in benediction. Tomorrow, the block will be loaded onto a ship. It will cross the sea, and it will become part of a temple or a palace. It will stand for thousands of years, a testament to the men who moved it. And those men, they will be forgotten. Their names will not be carved into the stone. Their songs will not be recorded. Their faces will fade from memory. But the stone will remember them in its own way. The stone will hold the shape of their hands, the echo of their voices, the weight of their labor. And we, centuries later, will look at the stone and wonder. We will wonder how it got there. We'll imagine the ropes and the ramps and the sweat. And in that wondering, we will honor them. So sleep now. Sleep with the image of the block floating on the dark water, the stars reflected in the sea. Sleep with the sound of the oxen breathing, the fire crackling, the men coughing softly in their sleep. Sleep with the knowledge that somewhere, under the ruins of an ancient city, there is a stone that was once touched by a man named Philon, who thought of his daughter as he pulled. And that stone is still there, waiting for you to remember. Now, let us turn our gaze to another place, a different quarry, far from the white marble of Pentelicus. This one is on the island of Naxos, where the stone is a coarse, hard granite, gray and speckled like the back of an old fish. The workers here are not slaves, not most of them. They are free men paid by the piece, and they are proud. They have a saying, if you can cut Naxian granite, you can cut anything. And it is true. The granite is stubborn. It does not yield easily to wedges or hammers. It takes time, patience, and a kind of brute cunning. The quarry is near the coast, where the sea wind blows hard and constant. The men work in the open, their faces burned by the sun, their hands calloused and cracked. They start before dawn when the air is still cool and the stars are just beginning to fade. The foreman, a tall man named Leonidas, stands on a ridge and watches them. He does not speak much. He does not need to. He has a stick, and he points. "That block," he says, and the men gather around it. They set their wedges and their mallets, and they begin to work. The rhythm is different here. The granite does not ring like limestone. It makes a dull, thudding sound, like a heartbeat that is too slow. The men take turns. One man holds the wedge, another strikes. The blow must be precise, not too hard, not too soft. If you strike too hard, the wedge shatters. If you strike too soft, nothing happens. It is a dance, a slow and deliberate dance, and the men know their steps. One of the workers is an old man named Thales. He is not related to the philosopher, but he is a thinker in his own way. He has been cutting granite for 40 years. He has no teeth, and his back is bent, but his arms are still strong. He says that the stone has a memory. It remembers the heat of the volcano that made it, the pressure of the earth, the slow passage of time. When you cut it, you are releasing that memory. The stone groans. Sometimes it even weeps. He has seen it, he says. A block of granite, when split, can weep water. It is not water, of course. It is moisture trapped inside, but to Thales, it is tears. The stone is sad to be broken. The other men do not laugh at Thales. They respect him. He is old, and he is still working, which means he is good. But they also know that he is a little strange. He talks to the stone. He tells it stories. He sings to it. He says that if you treat the stone kindly, it will treat you kindly. And maybe he is right. He has never lost a finger, never been crushed. He is the luckiest man in the quarry. During the midday rest, Thales does not eat. He just sits, his back against a block of granite, and closes his eyes. The other men eat their bread and olives, and they talk. They talk about the price of grain, about the women in the village, about the new temple being built on the mainland. They talk about the gods. Some of them are pious, and they make small offerings to Hephaestus, the god of fire and forging, or to Athena, the goddess of crafts. Others are more skeptical. They say that the gods do not care about stonecutters. They say that the only god who matters is the one who pays the wages. But Thales, when he speaks, says something different. He says that the stone itself is a god, not in the way of statues, but in the way of mountains. The stone is old, older than the gods of Olympus, older than the sky. It was here before anything, and it will be here after everything. And when you cut it, you are not destroying it. You are transforming it. You are giving it a new shape, a new purpose. The stone becomes a temple, a wall, a road. It becomes part of human life. And that, he says, is a kind of prayer. The men listen and they nod. They do not fully understand, but they feel it. There is something sacred in the work. Now, let us drift to another scene, a different kind of quarry. This one is not on a mountain or an island. It is underground, a dark and humid place where the stone is soft and green. It is a quarry for poros, a type of limestone that is easy to cut but hard to transport. The workers here are mostly slaves, chained and guarded. They are not allowed to rest. They are driven by overseers with whips and shouts. In this quarry, the air is thick with moisture and the smell of rot. Water seeps from the walls, and the floor is slick with mud. The workers move in a dim light, their torches flickering. They cut the stone with chisels and hammers, but the stone is soft, so they work fast. Too fast. Sometimes they cut too deep, and the block cracks. When that happens, the overseer beats them. It is a harsh life, and it is short. But even here, there is a kind of peace. There is a slave named Hector, a man from Thrace who was captured in war. He is young, barely 20, but he looks older. His back is a map of scars. He has lost all hope of freedom, but he has not lost his mind. He has learned to escape into his own thoughts. While he cuts the stone, he sings to himself, a song his mother used to sing. It is a sad song about a river that flows through his homeland. He sings it softly, so the overseer cannot hear. The other slaves listen, and they hum along. The song is a small act of defiance, a thread that connects them to a world beyond the darkness. Hector has a friend, a man named Sisimos, who is older and more experienced. Sisimos has been in the quarry for 12 years. He knows the stone, knows how it feels, knows when it is about to crack. He has taught Hector to read the stone, to listen to it, and Hector has learned. He can tell by the sound of his chisel whether the stone is good or bad. It is a skill that keeps him alive. The overseers value a good cutter. They do not waste them. One day, Sisimos tells Hector a story. He says that there is a legend among the slaves, a story passed down from generation to generation. It is about a slave who cut a block of stone so perfectly that it became a door to freedom. The slave carved a tunnel through the mountain, hidden inside the block. When the block was moved, the tunnel was revealed, and the slaves escaped. The story is probably not true, but it gives them hope. And hope is a rare and precious thing. Hector thinks about that story as he works. He imagines himself carving a tunnel, slowly, carefully, year after year. He imagines the day when the block is lifted, and he steps out into the sunlight. He imagines the river, cold and clean, and the face of his mother, who is probably dead by now. But he imagines it anyway, and the imagining keeps him going. As the day ends, the slaves are herded back to their compound, a fenced area of crude huts. They are given a thin soup and a piece of bread. They eat in silence. Some of them sleep, others talk in low voices. Hector sits by the fence, looking up at the stars. The stars are the same here as they are in Thrace. He finds that comforting. He picks out the constellations his mother taught him: the bear, the scorpion, the great hunter. He says their names aloud, softly, like a prayer. Now, let us leave the underground and return to the surface. Let us go to a quarry on the island of Paros, where the marble is famous throughout the Greek world. The Parian marble is translucent, like alabaster. It is the marble of statues, the marble of gods. The quarries here are ancient, older than memory. They are tunnels driven deep into the mountain, following veins of pure white stone. The workers in Paros are a special breed. They are craftsmen, not just laborers. They are paid well, and they have a certain pride. They call themselves lithurgoi, stone workers, and they have their own guild, their own rituals. When a new worker joins the guild, he must swear an oath. He must promise to never steal a block, to never hide a flaw, to always put the stone before himself. It is a serious oath, and breaking it means exile. One of the Lithurgoi is a man named Cleon. He is in his 40s, with a thick beard and a booming laugh. He is the son of a Lithourgos, and his grandfather was a Lithourgos before him. He has marble in his blood. He can look at a block and tell you exactly where it came from, what depth, what vein. He can tell you how it will polish, how it will weather. He is the man the sculptors come to, the man who chooses the stone for the masterpieces. Cleon works in the main tunnel, a vast cavern lit by oil lamps. The air is cool and damp. The sound of chisels echoes off the walls. He is carving a block for a statue of Aphrodite. The sculptor, a man named Praxiteles, has ordered it. He wants a block that is flawless, with a warm hue. Cleon has found one deep in the mountain. It took him 3 days to reach it, crawling through a narrow passage. But it is worth it. The block is perfect. As he works, Cleon talks to the stone. He tells it about the statue it will become. He tells it about the goddess it will represent. He says, "You will be beautiful. You will be worshipped. You will stand in a temple for 1,000 years." The stone does not answer, but Cleon feels a kind of vibration, a hum. He believes it is the stone responding. Now the day is ending. The lamps are low. Cleon stops work. He wipes his hands on his tunic and walks out of the tunnel. The sun is setting over the Aegean, and the sea is gold and purple. He sits on a rock and watches. He thinks about his son, a boy of 10, who wants to be a Lithourgos too. Cleon is proud. He thinks about the future, about the statues that will be carved from this mountain, about the people who will see them and feel awe. He is tired. He is always tired, but he is content. And so, as night falls over Paros, over Naxos, over Pentelicus, and the dark underground quarries, the workers sleep. They sleep in huts and tents, in the open air, in chains or free. They sleep with the sound of the sea in their ears, or the dripping of water, or the wind. They sleep and they dream, and their dreams are full of stone. Let us stay with them for a while. Let us not rush back to the waking world. There is a peace in this, a stillness. The ancient world is quiet now. The hammers are still. The oxen are resting. The overseers have gone home. Only the guards remain, pacing slowly, their torches casting long shadows. In one quarry, a slave named Hector is dreaming. He is dreaming of a river wide and blue, with reeds along the bank. He is a boy again, and he is swimming. The water is cold, and it feels good on his skin. He laughs. He wakes up for a moment and smiles. Then he turns over and sleeps again. In another quarry, Thales is not sleeping. He is sitting up, looking at the stars. He is thinking about the stone, about the memory it holds. He believes that the stone remembers everything: the first rain, the first earthquake, the first human hand to touch it. And he believes that one day the stone will speak. It will tell its story, and maybe someone will listen. He lies down. He closes his eyes. He lets the sound of the sea carry him away. And we, too, can let ourselves be carried. We can let our minds drift over the mountains and the islands, over the quarries and the temples, over the men and women who built this world. We can rest in the knowledge that their labor was not in vain. Their stones still stand. Their paths still cross ours. So, as the night deepens and the stars wheel overhead, we can think of them. We can picture their hands, their eyes, their voices. We can imagine the dust settling, the fire fading, the silence spreading. And we can sleep. Sleep now. Sleep with the weight of history, but a gentle weight like a blanket. Sleep with the echo of ancient hammers, soft and distant. Sleep with the peace of a world that is still, for a moment, complete. And yet, before we drift off completely, let us stay awake a little longer. There are more stories to tell, more paths to follow through the ancient world of stone and dust. The night is long, and the stars are patient. They have seen all of this before. They will wait for us to finish our tale. Let us travel now to another quarry, far from the islands of Paros and Naxos. Let us go to the mainland, to the region of Attica, where the mountain of Pentelicus rises above the plain. This is the mountain that gave Athens its marble, the gleaming white stone that built the Parthenon and the temples of the Acropolis. The quarries here are open to the sky, carved into the slopes like giant steps. They are not tunnels, but terraces, each one a scar on the mountain's side. And yet, even a scar can be beautiful when the sun strikes it at the right angle, turning the stone to honey and gold. The workers at Pentelicus are a mixed group. Some are free men, hired by the state. Others are slaves, owned by wealthy contractors. There is no guild here, no lithurgoi with their oaths and rituals. It is a rough place, a place of noise and dust and sweat. But there is also a kind of order, a rhythm to the work that has been going on for generations. The overseers stand on high platforms, watching the men below. They shout commands. They crack their whips, but not often. They know that a good worker is worth more than a punished one. One of the free workers is a man named Diodoros. He is 30 years old, with a lean body and a face weathered by sun and stone dust. He comes from a village at the foot of the mountain, where his father was a farmer. But Diodoros did not want to farm. He wanted to work stone, to shape something that would last. He started as a boy, carrying water for the cutters. Then he learned to use a hammer and chisel. Now he is a skilled block dresser, the man who smooths the rough faces of the stone after it has been cut. Diodoros works with a team of 4 other men. They are breaking down a massive block, one that will become part of a column for a temple in the city. The block is already cut to a rough cylinder, but it must be dressed smooth, its surface prepared for the sculptors who will add fluting later. The men work in a rhythm. One chisels, one hammers, one checks with a straight edge, one pours water to keep the dust down. It is slow work, painstaking work. A mistake can ruin the block, and a ruined block means lost pay. Diodoros does not mind the slowness. He finds it meditative. He likes the sound of the chisel, the way it rings against the stone. He likes the feel of the stone under his hand, the way it changes from rough to smooth. He talks to his team in a low voice, telling stories, joking, complaining about the heat. They are a family, these men. They know each other's moods, each other's strengths. They know when to push and when to rest. The heat is the worst part. It is summer, and the sun beats down on the terrace without mercy. There is no shade, no relief. The men wear wide-brimmed hats made of woven reeds. They soak cloths in water and wrap them around their necks. They drink from clay jars, the water warm and tasting of the clay. Diodorose has a trick. He chews on a piece of mint to keep his mouth moist and his mind cool. It works, a little. At midday, the overseer calls a halt. The men stop work and retreat to the shade of a large awning set up near the edge of the terrace. They sit on the ground, eating a simple meal: bread, olives, dried fish, figs. They do not talk much. They are too tired. Some of them lie down and sleep, their heads on their arms. Diodorose stays awake. He looks out over the plain, towards the city of Athens. He can see the Acropolis, the temples under construction. He knows that the stone he is shaping will join them, will become part of something greater than himself. It is a good feeling. After the meal, the work resumes. The afternoon is longer, hotter. The men slow down, but they keep going. They know that if they stop, the overseer will dock their pay. They know that if they fall behind, they will be replaced. There are always men waiting for work. At the bottom of the mountain, in the village, there are dozens of men who would take their place. So they work. As the sun begins to sink, the light changes. The stone glows orange, then rose, then violet. The shadows lengthen. The men work faster now, eager to finish before the light is gone. Diodorose sets the final chisel cut, a clean line down the face of the block. He steps back. His team nods. It is done. The block is dressed. The overseer comes over to inspect. He runs his hand over the surface. He nods. He says, "Good work." The team is dismissed for the day. They gather their tools and walk down the mountain path. Diodorose is tired, but it is a good tired, the tired of a day well spent. He thinks about the evening ahead. He will go to the taverna, drink some wine, eat a hot meal. He will talk with his friends, laugh, forget the dust for a few hours. Then he will go home to his small house, to his wife and his 2 children. His wife will have kept the evening meal warm. He will eat, he will bathe, he will lie down on his bed of straw and fleece, and he will sleep. But sleep does not come easily tonight. He lies awake, listening to the sounds of the night, the crickets, the distant barking of a dog, the wind in the olive trees. He thinks about the stone, about the temple it will become. He thinks about the people who will see it hundreds of years from now. Will they know his name? No. But they will see his work. That is enough. Let us stay with Diodorose for a moment in the quiet of his home. The oil lamp flickers. His wife breathes softly beside him. His children stir in their sleep, then settle. He closes his eyes. He lets his mind drift. He sees the stone, smooth and white. He sees the temple rising against the sky. He sees a woman in a long robe, carrying a basket of offerings. She walks up the steps, into the shadow of the columns. She is beautiful, but he cannot see her face. She turns, and she is gone. Now let us leave Diodorose and move to another place, another time. Let us go to a quarry on the island of Naxos, where the stone is a different kind of marble, coarser and harder, good for buildings that must withstand the wind and the sea. The quarry at Naxos is old, very old. It was worked long before the Greeks came, by a people whose name we do not know. They left behind half-finished statues, abandoned in the quarry, figures of men and women and gods that never got to see the light. They are still there, lying where they were left, covered in dust and lichen. The workers on Naxos are mostly slaves, owned by a rich merchant who supplies stone for the temples of Delos and Samos. They are treated harshly, but not cruelly. Their overseer is a man named Philon, a former slave who bought his freedom. He is strict, but he remembers what it was like. He knows that a beaten slave is a slow slave, so he uses other methods. He rewards good work with extra rations. He punishes laziness with extra hours. It is a system that works mostly. One of the slaves is a young man named Pyrrhos. He is from Asia Minor, captured in a raid 5 years ago. He was a potter's apprentice before his capture. He knows clay, not stone, but he learns quickly. He has learned to handle the heavy hammers, the iron wedges, the chisels. He has learned to work in a team, to lift and carry, to endure. He has not lost hope. He still believes that one day he will be free. Perhaps he will be ransomed. Perhaps he will save enough to buy his freedom. Perhaps he will escape. He does not know how, but he believes. Pyrrhos works in the deep part of the quarry, where the stone is hardest. The dust here is thick, a fine white powder that coats everything. It gets into his lungs, his eyes, his skin. He coughs constantly. His eyes are always red. He is given a cloth to tie over his mouth, but it is not enough. He knows that many of the older slaves have died of the dust. It is a slow death, a quiet death. His friend, an old man named Theodoros, died last year. He stopped coughing one day. He simply lay down and did not get up. Pyrrhos tries not to think about that. He focuses on the work. He focuses on the rhythm of the hammer, the feel of the chisel, the sound of the stone cracking. He imagines that the stone is clay, that he is shaping a pot on a wheel. It is a fantasy, but it helps. He can almost feel the wet clay between his fingers. He can almost hear the potter's wheel spinning. At night, the slaves are locked in a compound, a walled enclosure with a single gate. They sleep on the ground in rows like animals. But Pyrrhos has made a small space for himself, a corner where he has placed a thin mat and a blanket. He has hidden a piece of charcoal, and on the wall of the compound he draws. He draws what he remembers: a pot, a tree, a river, a face. The drawings are crude, but they are his. They are a record of his mind, a proof that he is still human. One night, the overseer Philon comes to the compound. He walks among the slaves, looking at their faces. He stops in front of Pyrrhos. He sees the drawings on the wall. He looks at them for a long time. Then he says, "You have skill." Pyrrhos does not answer. Philon says, "I will give you a different job. I will put you in the shed where we shape the smaller blocks. You will work with the other artisans. It is less dust. It is safer." Pyrrhos nods. He does not know if he should thank Philon. He does not know if this is kindness or just practicality. But he takes the new job. The shed is a roofed area near the entrance of the quarry. Here, the stone is shaped into blocks for the market, small enough to be carried on a wagon. The work is finer, more precise. Pyrrhos works alongside a sculptor named Dorotheos, a free man who comes from Athens. Dorotheos is old, with shaking hands. but he still has the eye. He teaches Piros how to measure, how to draw the design on the stone, how to carve the letters for inscriptions. It is a new world for Piros, a world of order and beauty. Piros learns quickly. He learns to read the scripts, the Greek letters, the names of the kings and gods. He learns to carve them cleanly, deeply, so they will last. He does not understand the meaning of all the words, but he understands the shape, the rhythm, the way the letters flow. He begins to enjoy the work. He forgets for a few hours that he is a slave, but the chains are still there around his ankles. They remind him every time he stands. The shackles have worn grooves in his skin, calloused and numb. He does not feel them anymore, but he knows they are there. One day, a ship arrives from Delos. It is carrying a delegation of priests, come to inspect the stone for a new temple. They walk through the quarry, looking at the blocks, feeling the surface. They stop at the shed. They see the inscribed blocks, the letters fresh and clear. They ask who carved them. Dorotheos points to Piros. The priests look at him. They see the chains,